Lord, we go deep sometimes. Idella went deep in that prayer about responsibility. And when you look at, yes, when you look at the side banners on either side and you look at our monthly themes that coordinate with the global organization, June is, your favorite word, right? Accountability. Don't you just feel all warm and fuzzy about that word? Language is so fascinating because we, depending upon our relationship with words, is the way in which we feel about those words. And so some people love the word God, and some people don't, depending upon whatever religious wounding that happened in their formative years. Some people love the word money, and some people, every time they hear it, all they can think of is the not having of. Some people love the word forgiveness, and other people cringe as if it's some duty that we have to do and this thing that makes us a doormat. And so it isn't about the word, right? It's not about the word. It's about our feeling, emotion, and story around the word. And I would venture to say that the same thing is applicable to this idea of accountability. And so accountability is one of those, present day buzzwords that says you have to be accountable, or you need to be in an accountability partnership, or you need to be in a masterminding group. Need. And so you do need that, by the way. But let's look at this for a moment, because life, what is that? It's a big thing, big definition. Life is not accountable to us. We are accountable to life. And so if life is immeasurable, it's boundless, it's the energy of all creation, it's the essence of everything, and of course you can't measure that. If it's not accountable to us, we have to be accountable to the amount of receivership or availability to that which is life, right? So it's not waiting on us, it's not holding back, it's not taking a vacation. It's not waiting for you and I to get our act together before it implements itself. It's ongoing. And so part of the accountability for us being spiritual beings having a human experience in breathing life is at what level and to what degree are we going to allow life to live through us. And when I say to live through us unencumbered, without any kind of reservation or qualification as, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy because I have this particular story. Life does not know that. And I'm using life synonymous with God and intelligence and source. It knows nothing of your personal self-imposed diminishment. It knows nothing of that. It's simply life. And so our accountability or responsibility with that awareness is, we wake up every day going, to what degree will I allow that in? And the thing about mental science or this philosophy or being a metaphysician or on a spiritual path is at some point we come to the realization that there's nothing to acquire. That what this is an isness. Love then just is. You and I don't acquire love. What we have to do is we have to examine, self-examine all of the barriers that we have put to prohibit love from being pronounced within our lives. Because love just is, like life. It just is. That which is deemed success or worthy is falsified in our mind by thinking that we have to go and earn that in order to call ourselves successful or call ourselves worthy, when in point of fact you are essentially worthy because you have life breathing through you. So it's an isness. And yet the human component would like us to believe that we have to go and get something, when really it's about stop getting and let something. So with all thy getting, get understanding. With all thy busyness about trying to get to this particular destination, pause for a moment and realize that the thing that you're after, you already are. Let's go to lunch. Okay, all right. So, a synonym for accountability is responsibility. And when you break up the word responsibility, you get the root respond. And in the Latin, because I know you wake up every morning going, what's the Latin of respond? So re means again, but spondere, the Latin of spond, simply means to pledge. So to respond means that I pledge over and over again to be in alignment with this knowingness of life. Responsibility then is the ongoing pledging again and again, moment by moment. You don't take one pledge and then be done with it and off you go. It's a lifestyle. It's a moment by moment thing. It's mindfulness. It's that Buddhist path that they talk about. Every single opportunity is the availability for us to respond instead of react. And so when we see that, what the title today is the culture of this. How do you develop a culture of accountability? And so the acquisition and the building blocks of this comes from not getting something, but removing and removing and removing and removing all of the story and all of the layers and all of the things that have latched on, that we have allowed to latch on to, in order that we may be free to fully understand what is before us. And so this is the fascinating thing, because what I love is that you're willing to go deep, because it's not enough to speak about, come take this class and we're going to speak this affirmation. That's not it. What is available to us, what is beckoning us to be accountable, is the allegiance that we are giving to that which is subjectively inside of us. So quick lesson again. Inside all of us, we have the objective way in which we view the world, which we make our choices from, and then subjectively is all of those collected inherent beliefs based upon our exposure, our domestication, where we're from geographically, all of the things that we have allowed ourselves to align with simply because we have been absorbed in that. And it's not just that. It's the race, mass, conscious, relational ideas that exist within us subjectively too. So if there's a widespread belief that the world is unsafe and everybody's out to get you and all of this kind of stuff, that is housed within us subconsciously. And so if we're not willing to look at those things and to look at the specifics of what the fears that we let hold us back, if we don't become curious enough to uncover those things and to face them, just like the knight, if it's constantly running away from the dragon, then its ass is going to be burned all the time. But if it turns around and it says no and it faces the dragon, then that energy is diffused. And so we're either turning around and facing the falsity, or we're continuing to run as fast as we can and distance ourselves. And the irony is that the faster and longer we run, the more we take it with us. Okay? So this thing called spirituality isn't about doing all of this from the neck up. It isn't about surface intellectualizing. Get your head out of a book and begin to take that knowledge and apply it. And so in the application of it, the thing that's so beautiful is that we begin to realize, just like Idella said in the prayer, about that responsibility. And to look at, is that a trigger word for me? Or can I let that be enthusiastic? Can I become enthralled about being the inner inquirer about my life? Why is this trigger here? Why does this push my button? Why does this fear continue to cycle around back and do its sabotage work brilliantly over and over and over again? When will I become so fascinated by that I will stop running away from it long enough to turn around, face it, and breathe? And that becomes the mastery. And that's the class that we're all in. This is a master class of applying this spirituality and understanding what goes on. So in this subconscious, this subjective realm, are all of these stories and all of these histories. And the thing that I love about spirituality is it brings in imagination over and over and over again. And what do you know to be true about imagination? That it's limitless, right? You have the power to use that capacity of imagery, of mental imagery, as much as you want to. When you combine that with basic quantum physics, I know you woke up this morning going, okay, what's my quantum physics lesson for today? That there is no such thing as time. What? And you're like, whoa. So this whole idea of what is past and what is future is actually a falsity as well, because then time in the human construct isn't really real, that everything is sort of unilaterally happening. And so the memory of our trauma and the way in which we reacted to it, we have the ability to use imagination to begin to change or alter our response, our pledge. Do you see what I just did there? I went back to the word responsibility, re-pledge. I put a little Latin in there. So go back to responsibility, to re-pledge, to go, I'm not going to tell this story again and again and again and again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that circumstance and I'm going to revision it in such a way that I'm going to begin to reclaim whatever power I diffused or gave away. And I really am going to use the idea that what I think and dwell upon does become my reality. So, if the story is a juicy story of all of your trauma and you continue to tell that, there's nothing wrong with that. This isn't a right or wrong debate. It's simply a matter of law. And law, as we know it, the energy of cause and effect, simply says that what you continue to tell continues to become your reality. That doesn't make you or I a bad person when we do that. But we are reminded that we have an option. And so it isn't until we get so fed up, or that we hit rock bottom, or we become sick and tired of being sick and tired, that we really entertain these concepts and you know what? I am tired of being this victim. I am tired of telling this story. I didn't do anything wrong. We're all operating and greeting life at the level of our understanding. But you know what's great about understanding? It too expands, right? And so, do you remember when your parent wagged their finger at you and said, you know better? So I'm going to do that. You know better. But now diffuse that and look at it as you know better. So with each passing, entertaining look at yourself, your knowing gets better. So the knowing that you have today isn't the same knowing that you had 6 months ago or even a year ago. Knowingness continues to expand. Consciousness continues to expand. So we are not at the mercy of what happened to us, but as crazy as it sounds, we look at those things and we see that everything has been happening for us to get us to levels of decision making. And so you get to decide to what degree you will have a quality relationship with accountability. And so before you and I go and sign up for an accountability partner, here's the thing. If we haven't really become curious about what our trigger is, if we haven't looked at the way in which we treat self, small s, self, and if we're not engaged in a regular path of self-forgiveness, then it doesn't matter how much accountability we do, what will happen? All of that which is subjectively stored in there will continue to circle back up and to sabotage every attempt that we make in order to improve or expand. It's kind of like going and buying a brand new dining room set, but you don't have a dining room. Now, that could be a good thing because maybe you do want a dining room, and so, but now you're having to house it kind of like in your bedroom and in the kitchen and or in storage, because you haven't really made space for that. And so, if I'm going to sign up, or if I'm going to move into the energy of being accountable, I have some homework to do. And that homework is I have to be understanding of self. I have to be forgiving of self. So I do a lot of work on the road, and part of what I do filters around the idea of imagination, and I call it revisioning work, and it was inspired by Neville Goddard, who I'm a big fan of. And so when I work with people, we set up these steps or these criteria of looking at memory. And when I was on the road recently, a woman very bravely, so proud of her, came in front of the group and she told her story, because I say, pick a memory. So she picked this memory, and she said when she was a little girl and she had a sister, that her father would hit her with his fist repeatedly, over and over again. And I said, and when did it stop? She said, it didn't until I moved home in my early 20s. And I said, did the same event occur for your sister? And she said, yes. And I said, did you have a mother? And she said, yes. And I said, and what did the mother do when your father was hitting you? And she said, not much. In fact, she was more concerned that when I would lose control of my bowels, when my father would hit me, she would have the vacuum cleaner and the cleaning solution ready, because her emphasis was more on the tidiness of the house than it was in protecting her. Now, her story, and she was, I'm going to say, in her mid-60s. Her story and her path for most of her life was about trying to find a way to forgive her father. And looking at this and going to therapy and doing all kinds of work around this and doing the Gestalt dialogue and everything that she knew possible and that she was willing. But it struck me as she was telling the story that all of this emphasis that had been placed upon her father really could be placed upon her mother. Because as a child, you know, that concept of the nurturer, the archetype of the mother to come and to hold and to caress and to protect and to love wasn't there. It was just observing. More concerned about cleaning up the mess. Now, to that credit, she did say that her mother lived a very frightened existence and didn't know anything else, and so she was just trying to make peace as best as possible. So that lots of forgiveness opportunity there. And in this revisioning thing, we look at, how do I change my reaction to a response? How do I do it more consciously? You can't change the free will of another individual, but I can change the way in which I respond to the event. And someone beautifully pointed out to me one time, I was a child. I don't know how to change the response. And they said, but what I did was, is I brought today's present self into the scenario. Because if there's no such thing as time, then all of the attributes of us, both child and adult, are all here at the same time as well. I know your mind's going, right? So, in this circumstance, I said, why don't you then come and nurture you? Why don't you, as adult you, put your arms around this little girl and remind her that she has done nothing wrong? That who she is precious and valued and worthy. And that the demons and the things that go on within her father's mind and his actions have to do with him. It doesn't have to do with you. Because you see, in those particular circumstances, and some of us have had varying degrees of that kind of stuff, our tendency is to say, what did I do to make this happen? What did I do wrong to make this happen? Now, if that goes unaddressed, and you show up and you start doing a spiritual path and you're taking classes and you get into an accountability group, what good is looking at accountability going to do you if subjectively we're still ruled by the world isn't safe and I'm bad? Do you see? This is fundamental stuff. So the real accountability is for you and I to sit, be still, and realize that who and what we are is whole, complete, and perfect, spiritually. You see, we're always straddling the fence, aren't we, between our humanity and our divinity. But just because the humanity part is flawed does not mean or negate the spiritual component, the divine nature of who we are. And so what are we doing in human form constantly? Recalibrating more to the divine, recalibrating more to the divine, recalibrating more to the divine so we can understand who we are instead of focusing on what we're not. And that's the spiritual path. That is the focus and the repledging, the responding, the accountability to life that never has left us. No one can do that for you. Only we can do this. We can create environment where as we forgive self, we feel safe to do that. But no one can forgive that piece of self for you but you. That's the beauty of responsibility. That's the power. Because if someone could, then we wouldn't have access to that power. And so one of the ideas I found in this book called Experiencing Spirituality was that forgiveness of self can occur only in the context of forgiving relations with others. I have to read that again. Forgiveness of self can only occur in the context of forgiving relations with others. And what they're saying is that self-forgiveness then isn't an isolation practice. It means that I have to be in the world. I have to move and breathe and be in the world. And when I get triggered in the world, somebody does something to me, part of the beauty of that is I get to look at that, and you love this phrase, you spot it, you got it. As I condemn, I realize that in my condemnation of something, that really what I'm doing is I'm unearthing the things within me that are condemned, that I feel about self. That's the shadow component. And so I get to look at all of those triggers and those people, and I get to do this forgiveness work with them and with self, because what I tend to judge is coming from my own self-judgment. And I know that you don't have enough practice with that, right? There's just not enough stimulus out there to judge these days. It's as if the world's been cleansed, right? No. Every single moment is that opportunity. But if I'm in isolation, I'm not going to have the ability to practice that. Every time I walk into a particular dynamic or group of people and I feel less than, or I feel unworthy to be there, it's not going to do me any good to leave. But the act of self-forgiveness then is to stand in the energy of that and notice how I'm feeling. And as I notice how I'm feeling, I begin to create reconciliation and go, no, I deserve to be here. I'm good, I'm loving, I'm valued. And I must be able to practice that in the uncomfortableness that makes me want to retreat and run, to run away from the dragon instead of turning to the dragon and going and being in the energy of that, so that I can begin to understand that what I'm running from isn't real. So the big point about this morning is that before accountability and the beautiful practice of accountability can actually stick, there must be an enthusiastic embracement of self-forgiveness. We must understand and know that who and what we are is not our story, that was just an incident, but it doesn't define who we are. And so what happens if we don't do that? What happens if we don't self-forgive? What happens if we hang on to those victim experiences and think that that's what we are and that's the totality and nothing's going to get better? Well, it's kind of like this. A teacher had each one of the students bring a clear plastic bag and then a sack of potatoes. And for every person that they refused to forgive in their lives, they were told to take the potato out of the bag, write the person's name down, and transfer that potato into the plastic bag. And so typically in this class, what happened was all the potatoes went out of the potato bag into the plastic bag. They needed more potatoes. But the assignment was, now in the plastic bag, with the potatoes labeled of who those people were, you get to carry that bag around with you. You carry it around with you. You put it on the driver's seat next to you. You put it by your bed. Or you ask your spouse or your loved one or your to move out of the bed so that the bag can go there. You have to carry it with you to work continuously. And how many of you have had a bag of potatoes in the refrigerator and forgot? Or in the cupboard and forgot? So then it begins to turn rancid and begins to smell. And that's pretty much the same as the energy of tugging and lugging and carrying around this resistance to forgiveness. Now, that illustration used a lot with regards to forgiving other people. I want to bring it back to you. It's essentially the same, but even more poignant. Because what we are lugging around when we don't fall in love with who we are as we are is the equivalency of that. And you don't think that the rest of the world can tell that? You don't have to announce that with big, flashy, shiny words. It's the energy of what we are. You know, when we walk into a place and we are holding just decades worth of self-loathing, it's like people are going, you don't have to announce that. We're very intelligent. We know innately what's authentic and what's not authentic. And so as we begin to look at this, a couple of things. Number one is we have to build trust. Not trust of other people. That will come. But trust of self. What does that look like? How many times have you said, I'm going to do this, and then you didn't do it? Every single New Year as we roll around and we make those reservations, and we don't follow through. So we laugh and we go, oh, I'll pick it up later. But do you know actually what's happening is a building block of mistrust. A couple of things. One is, can't handle it. I don't have what it takes to fulfill that or to see that through. The bigger one is, why bother? I'm just doing this for appearances, you know. So there's this sort of this undercurrent of futility. Yeah, I'm going to go through the motions of this, but I'm really not going to see it through because no one's going to care or notice anyway. That's not true, but that's predicated on all this internal stuff subjectively that's inside that says we don't matter or we're not of value. And so if we don't reacquaint ourselves with trust, the trust of self, by following through something, then we don't have the muscle or we don't have the platform or we don't have the capability of moving into full range accountability. So how do we reacquaint ourselves with the trust of self? One decision at a time. So make one decision, and don't make these big grand decisions like this month I will write the great American novel. No. It's like today. Ready? Today I will take a shower. And I will use the good soap. And I will use the guest towels. I will do something, and I will complete that particular task. And that's an incremental way to build up trust. Today, I will call that person, and I will ask for forgiveness, or I will move towards reconciliation in some way. Today, I will do that. I will make that attempt. I will bridge into that. And then become encouraging and supportive of self. Again, only you will know how to champion you. But here's the thing. Don't expect other people to be able to champion you in the way that you want to be championed, in the way that you want to be seen. if you are incapable or unwilling, which is more important, unwilling to do it for yourself. Become observant. Just like I said, what is your trigger? Why does that make you so angry? Why does that make you so fearful? Why does that make you feel so threatened? Because if you're willing to go on the journey of uncovering those things, to ask yourself those questions, and at the same time, hold the idea that you are safe, loved, whole, and complete, that you live in a universe of abundance, that the universe does indeed have your back, but you will only notice and recognize it to the degree that you allow all of this which is untruth to dissolve. And then be responsible. Be, not do responsible, but be. Respond. Practice responding. So repledging over and over again. Notice the common denominator. What's the common denominator in everything that has ever happened to you? Idella. No. Right? Ourselves. So it's that classic story, the old man at the city gate, watching travelers pass day by day. Travelers stop and they ask the man at the gate, "What's the people like in there?" And he goes, "What were the people like where you came from?" And he said, "Oh man, they were awful. They were gossipy, they were stingy, they were mean, they were vindictive." And the old man at the gate goes, "Yeah, you'll find those people here to be the same." Next traveler comes by and asks the old man at the gate, "What are the people like in there?" And he goes, "What were the people like where you came from?" "Ah, they were beautiful. It was sad to go. I loved them so much." "Yeah, you'll find the people in there to be the same." That's accountability. Let us respond, re-navigate, reconnect to what is ours to do. And you ready? Let's get upon the task of doing it. And so it is.
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.